Welcome to When We Die Talks. I'm your host, Zach Ansell. In this podcast, we explore different beliefs about what happens when we die and how those ideas shape the way we live. Thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you're here. Hey everyone, we're back with another anonymous episode, and hopefully my voice sounds a little more normal than it did last time. That cold knocked me out for a few weeks, and it was definitely a bummer to have to reschedule some of the anonymous calls that I had planned. But the good news is I'm feeling better and back at it and looking to do quite a few in the coming weeks. So keep applying if you're interested in possibly being part of the podcast. These anonymous episodes have quickly become some of the most popular ones, and they've also become one of my favorite parts of the project. I'm really grateful to be able to keep doing these and that I have so many people interested and willing to share their lives. I've said this before, but these conversations often go places I never expect, and you can definitely say the same about the two calls you're about to hear. While they are very different, they both end up circling around some of the same questions: how we make sense of death and how we live with those experiences. One caller is looking back on a decade marked by sudden, heartbreaking loss that resulted in almost a pileup of grief. The other grew up with death kind of always looming around in the background after their mother got sick when they were just a kid. And what struck me is that, even though their stories are different, there's this shared thread of resilience and self-reflection. Neither of them claim to have it figured out, none of us do, but both have spent a lot of time trying to wrestle with what death means and what, if anything, might come after. And real quick, before we get into the calls, if you haven't already, please make sure you follow When We Die Talks wherever you listen. It helps you stay up to date with new episodes, and it really helps me and the podcast keep growing. I know it sounds like such a little thing, but it really does help me a lot. The more people that follow the show, the more conversations like this we get to have. And with all of that said, let's get into today's episode. I hope you enjoy.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? It worked this time.
I'm wonderful.
Perfect. Well, yeah, so I just want to upfront just thank you for being willing to do this. And I know this could be a big question in itself, and maybe just kind of briefly, why did you even want to do this anonymous call?
At first, I just didn't even think about it when I signed up for it. And then after I did, it actually made me start to think about it more, because I've had a lot of weird, unusual, and unexpected deaths in my life, but they hadn't happened until I was after the age of 30. Like, didn't have a clue what death was or even cared about it, to be honest, because I just didn't have anybody close to me to worry about it. And, being young, who's worrying about death? I'll hit that point when I get there, I guess, was probably my attitude for a long time. But then after I signed up, it kind of gave me the opportunity to think about it a little bit longer, because I'm probably closer to the end of the road than I am to the beginning of my road at this point. And I thought, this is good for me. I should give this more thought.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm glad that it sparked that for you a little bit, and we'll definitely dive in. And with all these calls, it starts in one place with every single person. It starts in the same place, and every conversation goes a vastly different way. So I'm excited to see where yours goes, and it sounds like you have some interesting things to talk about, and I'm glad that it sparks some curiosity or some thought about it, because that's definitely a huge part about why I'm doing this. But before we really dive in and start talking about the heavy stuff, as some people would say, maybe just a little icebreaker. Obviously, we're keeping this anonymous so that you feel comfortable, but maybe just kind of get to know you a little bit. Maybe you can just let us know where you live, and it doesn't have to be super, super specific, and then what your favorite book is and why.
I can tell you the first one right away off the top of my head. I live just south of Philadelphia. I was actually born in Philly. I can see the skyline from my rooftop.
Oh, nice.
But I'm a Philly girl.
Okay. I like it.
And I believe my favorite book would be I Am Still the Greatest, says Johnny Angelo.
Okay. I haven't heard of that one.
By Nick Combs. By Nick Combs.
Okay.
Nikchon.
Okay. And why do you love it? Like, why is it your favorite? And again, it doesn't have to be a long answer or anything, but
it's my favorite because a very good friend of mine, it was her favorite, and he just talked about it all the time until she sent it to me. And he has also left this mortal coil as well. So when I read it, I think of her, and at first it made me sad, but makes me happy because it's an odd book.
Okay.
I don't even know how to describe it to anybody.
Perfect.
But it's odd, quirky, funny.
I love that. I feel like I want to start somewhere where people can look up all the books that people recommended. And I love you even saying, this is my favorite book because it was my friend's favorite book. And they shared it with me. And I'm like, the world would be a better place if friends were sharing books with friends. Like, can we get back to like the simplicity of that?
Absolutely right. Because we would all be on a quest to find really great books to share with our people.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be bothered with all this other crazy, despairing nonsense that's going on.
Exactly. So that's like my maybe ulterior motive behind this project. But thank you for sharing that. I'm excited to check it out and add it to my reading list. But now we can kind of get into the big question and start with, what do you think happens when we die?
Well, today, I think what happens when we die is we just become a different form. I'm not exactly sure what that form is, but I don't think that we are done forever. I can't say that I have a particular religious affiliation because I don't. But like I've tried to learn a lot about different religions, and it just seems to me they all have the basic principle, like do your best while you're here, be kind, work hard, and be nice to animals. And I feel like if you just, well, that's from my father, actually.
I love that one.
Be kind, work hard, and be kind to animals, and that's it. And you'll get where you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
And like all my life, like there was no religion in my house. I did do some Catholic things when I was younger, but we never went to church. There was no church. So I didn't really have a concept of like nobody died. They died when I was adult.
Yeah.
Like my grandparents died.
Yeah.
And so I was like too far away from it to grasp it or even want to care about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And so it never really dawned on me, like, what happens when we die, because I just didn't know. And then all of a sudden, like, I guess it started in 2012. I'm an only child, and I had two cousins that were like my one older brother and one was a younger brother. And my older cousin, by a year, he was murdered very senselessly. And it began a cavalcade of death for me over the next 10 years or so. And
that's a different kind of death. That's not like people talk about, you have people, who die of illnesses and disease, but murder, that is a completely different category of things.
It is. It's a real crappy club that I belong to.
Yeah, very jarring.
We don't even have a cool. I've talked to many people that are in that situation, sadly, and I always try to find the humor in a situation, and it's really hard to in that one.
Yeah.
But the best I can say is we're still working on our secret handshake for that club. and it does kind of break the ice,
yeah,
off the heavy of it, because it's heavy. It's like, if somebody's, addicted to drugs, you're not surprised if they overdose. I mean, you're still sad if you're close to them. Like you said, with illness, if it says you're probably going to die from it and you do, you're not surprised.
There's some preparation to some extent.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yeah.
And I've also been on both sides of that fence as well. And the preparation doesn't really matter. It's
totally.
Both ways. It's
hard no matter what.
One side of that fence. Yeah, it is. But the murder thing has its own kind of category, and there's never really closure.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they caught the person, which they did, and I went through the whole, the trial and everything, and justice sometimes is not served as the way you want it to be, and it wasn't in this case. And I always thought, well, he's in a better place. I would try to listen in my head to all the things that I've been told about death, like, he'll be waiting somewhere for me, and it just. The longer the trial went on, the more it made me think, like, no, I don't know where he is. I don't know what is going on. Like, is there a time I'm ever going to see my cousin again? And it just, sent me down I guess you want to say, spiritual black hole.
I'm
to
sure.
Start to question it all.
And I'm sure that the trial just prolongs it too, right? It's like, to some extent, it like prevents grieving.
It does, because it's not like what you see on TV at all. It takes
of course,
long
right?
time, long time, and like in between each part of the whole justice system, it can take up to like 180 days, I believe it was, at least in my state. And like the fellow could just go there and plead his plea, and then you wait another 180 days for the next step, which was just like, oh, come on, like let's get to it already.
It is not a quick process.
And, no, and even when it was all said and done, and he was, given his sentence, which, of course, I did not think was quite enough for taking his life and taking the future away from everyone that loved him.
Yeah.
That didn't help either. It didn't. There was. It didn't. There's no help.
Yeah.
So I was left, wondering, like, okay, this is done. Now what? Am I still gonna? Where am I going to see him? Am I ever going to see him? And it just made me start to question that. And the more I dug into different religions, the more I just finally came to the answer that I came to myself. I guess I started my own religion in my own head. That's the best.
I was going to say, those are the best religions, I think.
It was basically what my father always said all my life was, be kind, work hard, and be kind to animals, and you'll all meet again.
Yeah.
How that happens, I don't know. But I have come to believe that the be kind to animals part had a big part of it. During the course of, like, after he was murdered.
I was going to say, you said this started off a kind of a slew of things.
Yeah. My mother was diagnosed with cancer, and then, and not long before that, my father was diagnosed, but he is in remission, or was in remission for quite some time. The night before my mother was diagnosed, the love of my life, my fiancé, died.
Ugh.
So, it was a little difficult, and I would always just say to myself, well, I'm going to revisit this grief when I'm done taking care of Mom, because she needs me now. And sorry to say, I would say to myself, well, he's dead. He's still going to be dead. I'll get back to this when I'm done with my mom. And then, sadly, Mom passed. And now I have a whole bunch of grief to deal with.
Just piling up.
Like it's piling up. And I'm like, all right, I got to deal with this, and I got to deal with it soon, because it's making me crazy.
Yeah.
Walking around in tears all the time, like wondering, am I ever going to see anybody I love ever again? Or am I just destined to just be a sad, sorrowful, crying, grieving woman where nobody wants to talk to me, or they don't know what to say to me? Like, it was starting to get to that point where I would, I'd be like, well, people wouldn't show up, or they wouldn't call anymore. And then I thought, well, if I saw someone like me right now, I'd probably cross the street myself. So it made me kind of forcibly deal with it and sent me on finish that journey off. And
that's a pretty amazing step to take for yourself, just like to recognize, just to, I don't know, be able to step back in a moment like that. I think that's very impressive.
Well, thank you. I don't know that I thought that way at the time, but
totally.
I was either going to like lose my mind or figure this out. It was interrupting my own daily, business. It was just simple things. I couldn't do simple things without starting to be hysterical. And, what am I going to do? Go pay a therapist every day for the rest of my life? Hell no. So
it adds up.
Nothing against therapists, but, nothing against you guys. You're great. I love what you do. I just can't afford to do that for the rest of my life.
Totally.
And however much longer that was going to be.
Yeah.
So that was where I really dug in deep and started to, question this and question, I had friends of different religions, and I would talk to them about, well, what did they think and why did they think it? Is it because you were told this, or do you believe it?
Yeah.
And for the most part, the answers I got were they were told it and they do believe it, which really kind of boggled my mind, because I tend to be like analytical and scientific thought process.
Yep.
And it just I wasn't grasping it. Like, how can this be?
Yeah, totally.
There's this
I'm
big
right there
science
with you.
thing,
I'm very similar.
you get it done. Well, all right. So yeah, it's like, how am I supposed to accept this thing that I can't see? And I get it. There was the gravity and all these great scientific, inventions and discoveries that were discovered. We couldn't see them or feel them, but they were there.
I was gonna say, but you could still kind of see gravity in a way, right? Like, there's a way that you can experience it, right? And I guess spiritual people would say there's a way that you can experience God or whatever they want to call it. But I'm right there with you.
Right.
Like, it's a huge leap of faith, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Is because I think, again, we grew up in a very similar way. At least religiously, we didn't have that exposure. And so something that I've thought about a lot is, if you're, and not saying, hey, because I've talked to people where it's like, oh yeah, I was born essentially into the church, went to church my entire life, discovered that wasn't for me, and I went down another path or whatever. But I do kind of wonder, like, does even just having that exposure to spirituality at a young age open you up to having faith? Versus, like, I didn't have that. So my exposure was essentially kind of like what you're talking about, was science, like the religion of science, and like proving things and having these tangible measures. And so I do wonder about that a little bit, of like, not having that exposure. Does it make it harder as an adult to like tap into spirituality?
I think it does. I think, because when you're younger, that's when you are learning about everything. And if you are exposed to Judaism or Catholicism or whatever it is, it does give your mind an opportunity. But I also think on the flip side of that, if you're overexposed to it, then you can't have an open mind to like other religions. Yeah. And then we got religions fighting, and then there's that. Yeah. So I think there's a fine line. Totally.
I think I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, and I've been to church, I've been to synagogues, I've been to a mosque, and and it didn't do anything for me. Like, I didn't get it. I just I kind of like understood why other people were getting it, but it just wasn't opening anything at all for me whatsoever. And I started to question like so many things, like, is there something wrong with me? Am I like a psychopath? Or Well, thankfully, I don't think I am. Yeah, as far as I know.
Totally. But, you don't sound like a psychopath, but I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about. So who knows? But you definitely don't sound like a psychopath to me.
Well, thanks. That's probably the best psychopath that I would be doing it, right?
Touche.
But no, I'm actually not. Some people might call me a little psycho, but I'm not psychopathic.
Yeah. Very different.
I think. Yes, exactly. And they have their own sort of religion, I believe. I don't really need to know anything about that one. I think for me, at the end of the day, it's really about. My father always, there's things that pop up in my head. He never really believed, even though he would say, be kind, work hard, and be kind to animals, his belief of death was getting ready for the big dirt nap. Yeah. All my life, that's all I ever heard was the big dirt nap, and then that's it. Like, so do what you're supposed to do now, because you won't be able to. You'll be 6 feet under. And I'd be like, well, damn. Yeah. Well, that's kind of crappy, too. Yeah. There just has to be, from a scientific standpoint, none of us should exist. Yeah. Not one single person.
The odds of it are insane.
Right. And so, like, for me, for that all to come together and all of us be here on this planet, this one tiny little planet, there has to be some kind of something orchestrating this entire thing. And whether we are an experiment or just we are exactly what we were supposed to be, I don't know. But that kind of gives me comfort to believe that there's something out there that put us here and is going to take our energy when we're done in this form and turn it into something else. What that is, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I think that's faith,
it's
right?
The big dirt nap, as my dad said.
Yeah, that's my dad, and I've said it on the podcast. It's game over, fade to black. That's what my dad has said my entire life, and that in some ways has become what I've said too. And that's why I started this, because I was like, God, that's terrifying. This is why I'm freaked out about death. And I'm not blaming my dad. It's like, no, like I'm doing my own scientific whatever in my head. And I do think it's interesting that you do take a scientific approach to say, well, the odds of this happening are incredibly rare. So there must be a little magic or something. But yeah, it's like, it's been my belief. And I think my beliefs are changing. And it's along the lines of what you're saying is it's like, I don't necessarily know what they're changing to, but I do feel like I'm having what I think is spiritual experiences with meditation. Yeah. And I'm not saying like, oh yeah, when I sit down to meditate, I see God and I travel through dimensions, and like, it's nothing like that. It's more just like, it's almost like I feel like I can like get to like a base setting of myself and kind of start to feel some connectedness to the world around me, which I think is hard to do in the world right now because true connectedness is not something that we really have access to without really attempting to find it. But it does sound like you found faith, and it's not necessarily, I found Catholicism, but it sounds like you found faith in a sense of you truly believe that you don't know what, but something happens. Yeah, and there was a moment that I absolutely came to that conclusion because after all these, deaths and everything, the pandemic came, and I was in a situation where, try as I might, like I had given up a lot to take care of my mom, and I was at a point where I had no work, I had no home, and I was starting to run out of money, and it was going quickly. And then a slumlord bought my building and was systematically evicting everybody. I couldn't get evicted because I didn't do anything wrong. She had to wait till my lease was up. And then when that was up, that was it. I was not able to find anywhere that I could afford. So I was forced into living in my car with my dog. And at the time, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'll tell you. I'll be 62 this year. Okay. So this wasn't all that long ago. I was in my late 50s when this happened. And I'm about to be 38, and I couldn't sleep in a car without like getting out and be like, okay, now my body's wrecked for 3 weeks. Oh, I was wrecked. I bet. I was wrecked. I'm tired from that experience, but I made it through. I had about a month to prepare for it where I knew that I had tried everything I could possibly try, and this was going to happen without fail, so I better just prepare. So I deep dived into YouTube, watching people on how to do this, with their service dog, woman alone, and I figured it out the best I could, and probably burned all my credit cards. Sorry, I'm starting to pay them off. But about halfway through, like my dog, thankfully I had my dog, to be honest with you. I have a small Pekingese. He's 13 years old almost. And for him, from a dog's point of view, that's all they really want is to be with their human, the one that they love. And for him, simplicity. He didn't care that I didn't have a kitchen. Yeah. He didn't care I didn't have a bathroom. We were together 24 hours a day. Yeah. Dream life for a dog. And, he was like, man, I hit the jackpot. This is it. I knew where to get it. Right? And every day I would wake up and he would look at me and I would look at him. And I can't tell you how many times I wanted to just give it up, to be honest with you. But I would look at him and I'd be like, this little guy is depending on me. And all of a sudden, like one day, I'm looking at him and he's looking at me, and it just dawned on me, like, this is it. This is the be kind to animals part. And I got this kindness thing figured out, and I've worked hard, except for I'm, not a job, but I'm working hard to just stay alive right now. To live. So I've accomplished all of the things that my father said that you need to do. I now know that there's something else after this. Wow. And as strange as that sounds, no, that's how it happened for me. I love that. And I think, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but it's like, I kind of feel like it's really hard to find something. And I guess we're calling it faith, right? I mean, it is faith. Like, I think finding something as hard as faith when things are going really, really good is almost impossible. I feel like you really have to hit some really hard times, rock bottom, to really kind of be able to like start questioning the world around you, seeing things differently, and finding stuff like that. So I don't find it crazy because, I had not comparing, our years, because I would say my year was nowhere close to as bad as what you're talking about. But I had, a family member get, a diagnosis that was pretty severe and went through a divorce and just, kind of things compiling. But it is through that, all of that stuff that it's like, my meditation practice became this foundation in my life. And I started learning about myself in a completely different way. And so I think you have to go through the shit to find stuff. And so, I'm not shocked that, it doesn't sound strange to me that's how it dawned on you. And I have an 18-year-old or almost 18-year-old dachshund and a 2-year-old. So very different temperaments between the two of them, but there's something about animals. And, it's like,
there is.
I think that you found it through your dog is amazing. I love that so much.
This dog, do you know what IVDD is? He has IVDD. Dachshunds are also prone to this invertebrate disc.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was like, it sounds familiar, but I'm blanking. Yeah.
He was up when he was 3 years old and was paralyzed on the hind end.
Oh, man.
And, it was, just like what is this? What do I do?
Yeah.
And, there was a surgery that could correct it that was starting at like $12,000. I'm like, I love my dog, but I don't have an extra $12,000 to put out. Like, what else can we do? They said a small percentage of them will get well with strict crate rest and a minimum of 8 weeks, where you'll have to pick them up and take them outside and express them and all that lovely stuff. So I looked at him, and I looked at my dad, who has had 5 hip surgeries over the course of my life. My mother was also on a cane at that point, and I'm like, well, if he's handicapped, he's handicapped.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. I'm going to do this, and we'll see what happens. And by some crazy miracle, he got better.
Oh wow, and, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's like when that happened, I connected with this dog in a way that I didn't know was possible.
Yeah.
And I don't, either people get it or they don't.
Yeah.
And if they're not kind of animals, like Dad says, they don't get it.
Yeah.
And so the relationship I had with this dog from then up until, being in the car with him was something special to begin with. And when he just it was a day, like I thought in my head, I'm just going to drive to this bridge and we're going to both go over it together. And he just looked at me like, can you give me a treat first? And I kind of and I was just like, I'm kind of just bawled. And he came over and he sat on my lap and just put his head on my chest. And that was the day that everything kind of changed and turned around. And then obviously I didn't drive over the bridge.
I'm so glad that happened.
Started to turn around. Thank you. So am I. I'm kind of grateful to still be here.
Yeah.
And to tell the tale. I did make it through to the other side. I did see. I don't know that you would call, most people would call them angels. I'm not sure who these people were. There were many strangers along the way that helped me in very odd, peculiar ways. There were people that I thought would be there for me, were not there for me. And it just made me have a completely different outlook on life itself. And you can't have a different outlook on life without a different outlook on death.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how that happened for me.
I love that. I love that line.
There's the whole yin and yang,
totally.
light and dark. You can't have one without the other. I mean,
it's all a balancing act.
So that's why when with him looking at me like I need a treat, that there's my faith.
Yeah.
He stopped us from, doing it that day. And, you got an 18-year-old, I got a 13-year-old. Inevitably, I can't even say it out loud.
Yeah.
But not today. I choose to think that there is somewhere, and I will be together again with my dog, and I'll be the man that I love with all of my heart still.
Yeah.
I'll see my mom and dad, and I'll see my cousins, and I'll meet other strangers that are dead. That, and one day I'll see you there.
Yeah, and you'll see the people that helped you along the way. But not today.
Not today.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And so that's kind of where my belief on death is. At this point.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you Like, you went through the shit, and I'm so glad that you were able to find yourself on the other side, because, you know, it's not easy. Life isn't easy as it is, let alone, you know, having all that stuff, you know, happening and this grief piling up, and yeah, just not great circumstances, but you made it through, and that's amazing.
Thrown into the mix. I would also think to myself, like, you know, I was on a different side, and being in my car also opened my eyes to just exactly how bad the homeless problem is in this country.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that every parking lot you pull into, there is at least one person, if not an entire family or more, living in that parking lot.
Which is wild.
I mean, it's insane, but it's true, because you don't see it until you're there.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah.
And I would just be grateful that at least I had a car to live in. There was people that didn't have that.
Yeah.
And, hey, you know, we made it through. Some housing opened up. We're here in my house, just me and Henry. That's his name. And, you know, every day that we have together is just another day. And when there's the days to come that we won't have together on this plane, we'll have them together on a different plane.
Yeah. I like to believe that too. There's something about animals, you know, pets, that just, you know, I've said for a long time that I'm not going to tell which family members this is true about. And not that it really, it's definitely joking, but like when Jackson, my 18-year-old, when he goes, it's like, that's going to be worse than losing some family members.
But that's true. It is.
There's just a bond. There's a bond that you have with your pets when you go through hard stuff.
Well, there's also that scientific stuff that kind of backs it up now.
Yeah.
They've proven that, you know, there's that whole thing that happens, the bond between you and the dog, where it releases the chemical in your brain. That's what happens when you pet a dog. And not only it's released in your brain, it happens
in theirs.
Their brain.
Yeah. It's a connection.
So it's, like, wow.
It's a bond.
It is a bond. That's why, you know, they say so many different cultures throughout millennia have always called dogs the guardians, the gatekeepers between here and there. Where there is, I don't know, but Henry will sure be there to hold his paw out for me when I get there.
I love that. I love that you have that guardian.
I do. I'm lucky. Not everybody has that.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm lucky that I had love. I had true love. I had that. Not everybody has that. I had it once, and it was beautiful. I'll have it again one day.
Yeah.
I had good parents. Not everybody has that either.
Yeah.
I'll see them again one day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being willing to do this and sharing and being so vulnerable. I loved your story and your beliefs, and I'm just so glad that we had this crazy, weird opportunity in this weird mathematical problem that doesn't make any sense to be here right now chatting with each other. But I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation. And thank you for
Me too.
Signing up. And yeah, I just really appreciate you.
Thank you for letting me tell my story.
Yeah.
There's much more to it.
Well, maybe we'll chat again in the future. We'll have part 2 or something.
Yeah, part 2, the other side.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much.
All right.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Today's episode is brought to you by Amori. How was your first Christmas without your mom? How was your wedding day without your dad? If you know the pain of losing someone you deeply loved, Amori is for you. Amori is a digital time capsule that helps you reflect on mortality, navigate emotions, and create heartfelt messages for your children, so you can feel prepared and let your presence be felt through life's many moments, even when you're no longer here. Let your words become a source of strength and comfort for those you leave behind. Tomorrow isn't promised, but your love can be. Download your mortality companion today at amori.life. That's AMORI.life, and use the code WhenWeDie50 for 50% off.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad.
I hope you can hear me well. I saw your notes about how to sound and be.
Yeah.
Doing my best.
It sounds great. Have you been having a good day?
I actually have been having a good day. It's been sunny. I'm in New York, and it's been wet and cold and rainy for like weeks, and it's finally sunny today. So it's wonderful. So yes, thank you. It's a great day today.
Awesome. Well, this question can send us off in a longer conversation. So maybe just briefly, just purely out of curiosity on my end, why you're interested in doing this conversation at all.
Definitely. I was just having an early Memorial Day dinner with my husband on our back porch in the beautiful sunlight. He made us hamburgers.
Nice.
And I set my timer to go off knowing you were going to call me. And I said, I got to go upstairs and talk to this guy about dying. So that's to say that I talk about it and think about it a whole lot. And in my house, it's like, this is awesome. I'm going to go talk to this guy about dying like for an hour or however long we talk, whatever. So I was like, I got to go, and my husband was like, yeah, go talk to this guy about dying because that's one less hour I have to talk to you about it.
Perfect.
I think.
Well, I'm glad I can help alleviate some pressure from your husband. But yeah, I'm glad that you are able to have a space that you're able to talk about it, because there's definitely people that I've talked to where it's I don't ever get to talk about it. So I'm glad that you get to do that. Yeah.
But then I probably should say on a more serious encounter note that probably has helpful context for you but I'm a writer and and I'm a nonfiction writer.
Okay.
And so I actually explore in my work, we'll probably get into the specifics of it, but I experienced illness and death from a very young age when my mother got really sick with cancer when I was 10 years old, and then she died when I was 22. And so for 12 years of my life, my mother was always worried she was going to die. I was suffering from all kinds of illness. And so in my upbringing, the idea that people can be here and then not be here informed basically my life. So I think about it a lot, and I try to make art from it and consider it. And I'm curious about other people's experiences about it. And so it's a very friend of mine.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you found this space and that we're going to have this conversation. I'm sure we'll get into a lot of the stuff that you've already mentioned. You already did mention that you're calling for New York, so that's one of my icebreaker questions. So we know that. And then the second question is, which I think this is going to be right up your alley, what is your favorite book and why?
Oh, well, that's really cool. I think a lot about this book. Actually, she was in Portland. Lydia Yuknevich, Chronology of Water, is probably one of my favorite books. And I think in the first page and a half, we learned that the narrator, it's a memoir. It's actually a movie that just premiered at Cannes. It just got turned into a movie. Kristen Stewart's directing it. I don't know.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Wow.
But it's been my favorite book for 10 years. And it sort of begins a journey of a woman who has a stillborn birth of a baby, and her relationship of kind of navigating grief and survival, being a woman with that kind of profound loss, and sort of the ways people act out. So yeah, I mean, actually, I'm really not trying to get an A+ on your test. But actually, I carry that book. When I travel, sometimes I carry it with me and refer to it. It's pretty beautiful.
I love that. I'll definitely,
profound,
I was going to say, I'll definitely pick it up. I do the same thing with my favorite book where I try to carry it around with me, and I always try to actually have an extra copy of it. But anyway, let's get into it. And so I'm very curious, just to start with the question of, what do you think happens when we die?
Ugh. It's funny because I think I have two answers to this question. It's what I wish or what I hope, and then what I really think.
Yeah.
They're actually two different things.
I think that's incredibly valid.
Yeah, I think they're two different things. And then I guess I do like to number things. And then I think there's a third thing. So let me start with the third thing. I'm pretty sure that there's no way to know.
Yeah.
And I think it's by design.
Yeah. I'm 100% with you on that. I don't think there's any way to know. And that's also why I love this question it's it's the mystery in it, which makes this fun.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's just truly no way to know. And I also think, because I don't think whatever happens there is relational to what we're doing here. So I feel I take a cup of sugar and I measure a cup of sugar for a cake I want to make here on Earth. And I feel like there's no cups of sugar Like the measurements are all different. Like the flavors are all different. The like ingredients are all different. Like, I just feel like whatever it is, I can't really actually know. I just don't think that is true. I just don't think I can know. But that's sort of a cop-out answer, because then I think the first thing I said, what I wish happened, and it would be really cool if there was an element of this. And so I actually do think there is an element of this. So maybe I'm answering the question a little jumbly, but
that's okay.
I think that we do have some connection to people that we had connections with here. And I don't think like we sit down necessarily. I wish we did. I don't think we sit down and like have a cup of coffee with them, or like watch a show, or like go on a trip or whatever. I don't think that's what I mean. Like, I don't think I can understand the way that manifests. I don't think I can like understand what it means. And the reason I think that is because I have felt like energetic pulls or coincidence. I've had the experiences. Some people talk about all kinds of different things that happen, like with people that they've lost. I've had those serendipitous like things that it's not just that they're like serendipitous or like coincidental, or like I can feel it inside my body sometimes when things have lined up. It's been very rare, but it has happened. And I feel that that's a wink to whatever it's going to be. Like I felt the presence of people. It's very rare. This does not happen all the time. I can count it like on maybe two hands, and I'm like in my early 50s. So like I've been around a minute, but like, yeah. So, I've been around, so that it's not like it doesn't happen. So I want to be clear. It's like every day I wake up and I've had the experience where I feel sort of in my body, it's like a breathlessness or like a surge or something. And I think, oh yeah, that person's here, or they're making themselves known in some way, or it's been in a dream or something. And I think, oh yeah, there's something going on in here. And I think, oh, that'd be really cool. Like if I could, that's what I mean by it may not be like a dinner date, but like there's some way that I do think we, like when we die, there's some kind of alliance or like a connection that occurs, whether we're conscious of it or whether it just exists. Like that part, I don't totally know. And then the second thing that I was like, oh man, is like, also I have a theory that like when you get anesthesia and you just like black out and it's just like over, like I do think there's a very strong possibility that it's also that it's just like neither sad nor happy nor a relief nor a joy. It's just like a literal, and that's kind of scary. It's sort of terrifying, but then it's also sort of like, well, I don't know, I've been under anesthesia a few times also because I've been alive a while, and it's like there's like it overcomes you. It doesn't feel like much except just the absence of being conscious. And I think there's also a strong possibility that happens, which would be super disappointing. I feel like that would be kind of a bummer if after all this, that's all there is. Like I would be like, oh man, but I'd be unaware, so maybe it would be fine.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I give you like a three options.
Totally.
What it is. I don't know.
I started this. I still don't really know how to quantify where I'm at on the scale of things, but it was when you were saying, because I've been kind of in the camp of like nothing happens. And that's where my anxiety and fears come from, because that is scary. But as you initially posed it as like anesthesia and you're not happy or sad or this or that, and as you were saying that, I don't know, this like feeling kind of overcame me a little bit of like, that is true. Like when I've, had surgeries and stuff and been under anesthesia, or like falling asleep, it isn't happy or sad, or there isn't any emotion attached to it. But I don't know. There's something about that is not a way that I've looked at it a little bit of, even though people always say it's just like going to sleep or whatever. I've never really attached that it's not happy or sad. And it's just the way that you phrased that was really beautiful. And I really like that.
Oh, good. I'm really glad. Yeah, kind of, it's funny. It did it for me too. I was like, oh yeah. Like, cause I get really anxious about all kinds of health stuff. And that's a result of growing up with a really sick mom and all kinds of stuff. And so like I can have, my big toe hurts and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my toe, and then I'm going to limp, and then I won't be able to ride a bike, and then I, whatever. And then I'll die.
Yeah.
It's like four steps away from dying pretty much every day. So I get the anxiety part. I don't mean to say I'm free of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I said that to you, I was like, it's kind of true though. Because I've had the experience of it. I guess this might be why you're doing a podcast, because it's like we know this is going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to happen to you and it's going to happen to me. Like, we're clear on that.
Yeah.
So why I think that like awareness is really important is because like it does bring into focus, at least for me. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, okay, so I know that's going to happen, but is that how I want to spend my life?
Totally.
Like, I want to spend my life with a sense of awareness about it, which is why I'm excited to talk to you and why I talk about it all the time. I think the awareness is important, but there is, like you were talking about, that the kind of, you didn't use this word peace, but whatever, like that midline of like neither happy nor, like that midline awareness
content
of or content. Yeah. Like just, to me, when I think about that, I think, oh, I'm going to go downstairs and like do something fun, or like it changes my it's like not an anxiety feeling. It's like oh yeah, this is going to happen. So I better really like make the most of right now. It's a little corny, but it's like, I better enjoy today because
there's no guarantees.
I can't really change. Yeah. And I can't change the outcome.
Yeah.
This experiment that I have been thrust into by whatever like universal life force is at play. Like, I truly did not choose to be here, and I'm not going to choose how to leave. Yeah. So I better like it would be cool to make the most of this instead of being nervous about it all the time. Yeah. It'd be really cool. I think
there's a book that I'm reading right now. One of the things he talks a lot about is that we have, just as like a culture or society, an expectation to live. We don't have necessarily the expectation to die, even though we all know that that's going to happen. And so I think that's exactly what you're talking about, is it's like having the awareness of it helps you live. That's why I'm doing the project. I guess that's another side part of it, is like, there's the selfish part of it for me that is just like, hey, I need to process my own anxieties and fears, and maybe talking to other people will help me work through that. But then I know I'm not the only person that has anxieties and fears around death. So I'm obviously hoping that it helps other people.
Yeah.
But I
think it's great.
I am curious if you're willing to talk about it. It had to be challenging growing up with a sick parent. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you even mentioned a little bit of like, and I know you weren't necessarily being fully literal, but you stub a toe and it's like, it's easy just to see how one thing can lead to the next, to the next, to the next, which can lead to death. That's probably growing up with a sick parent, and it was just one thing to the next.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also you're talking to a person who's I think I've been in therapy between once and twice a week for 35 years straight. So
I don't know how people don't go to therapy. Like,
totally.
I think it's awesome. I don't know how it like got like demonized or whatever, or like how people, I'm like, oh, it's like my favorite time of the week.
Yeah, it's the best. But why I reference that is just to say, like, so I can sort of like, okay, let me just distill some of, my experience for you by the benefit of all that work. And you asked, like, so what's it like growing up with a parent who's sick from a young age? And the toe stubbing thing, which I'll say to recall, like one thing leads to another, leads to I'm dying, is a reflex I've come to understand about myself as a reflex to not be sideswiped by pain, which may just be like an anxiety and trauma kind of response that people can have for in all kinds of scenarios. But as it manifested for me, it was like, so when I go on my journey of like A plus B plus C equals I'm dying, what I'm trying to do is not be a dummy, because when I was a kid, this is bringing it back. So when I was a kid, it's like my life is cool. I'm a kid. I have a mom. I have a dad. I was lucky.
Things are easy.
I have a sister. Things are easy. And then I learned my mom had cancer because I'm Jewish and my parents were first generation and spoke Yiddish. And they only spoke Yiddish in my house when something really bad was happening or I was like being bad or whatever. And I heard them speaking Yiddish in whispers in the next room. I was 10. And then I turned out, well, actually I did this thing. This won't resonate because the world doesn't work this way anymore, but you could like press your finger on the remote on the TV and the TV would change channels really fast and the sound would go out while you like flipped between channels.
Totally.
So I like pressed down on it and it would be like flip, flip, flip. And then I would hear like Yiddish, cancer. And then I would like press on it and I heard Yiddish. And so there's no apparently, or maybe there was, my parents just didn't know it, Jewish, like Yiddish word for cancer. So I heard them talking in Yiddish and I heard them talking about cancer in Yiddish because I don't speak it. And so.
And even at 10, you could do the math.
I was like, oh shit. Then we had this Time Life health like the series encyclopedia of books that we bought like off the television from Time Life. It was like health conditions.
Yes.
It was like basically WebMD before
totally.
WebMD. And
this is all bringing me back.
Okay, right on. You must not be that much younger than me. But anyway, and I took one of the books from the encyclopedia that I'd seen had been pulled out, and I opened it, and it was like cracked in the binding to cancer. And I was like, okay. So I was basically like a little sleuth. Like I was
gonna say you're a little
detective. In my house. Yeah, and so I basically figured out that my mom had cancer, and I knew it for like a week before they sat me down and told me. And then just to throw in a little extra sauce on it, when they told me, I pretended like I didn't know because I didn't want to like take the wind out of their sails. Yeah. So I was like, and then I acted surprised or whatever.
Which is so brutal, to look back and be like, just like the burden that a little 10-year-old was holding on to. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really is. I know, it's a real, and it basically set me off. Again, we don't have 30 years of therapy, you and I now, but it basically, if you know that about me, then you know everything about me. Actually, what I mean by that is because I can read other people, because I'm always doing my, work as a detective. I'm always managing other people's feelings. I'm working on this. I've improved a lot, but it defined a huge thrust of my life, which was also other people's problems are more important than mine.
Yeah.
Like there's like capital C cancer. There's people that have capital C cancer. And then there's like you who has like a math test, right? So like, which is going to win?
Yeah.
So it prioritized people's, it showed me there's a hierarchy of pain and that I was always going to be pretty much at the bottom of it. And that's sort of how my life was going to work. So going back to the stub toe, like why I had medical anxiety and I can go there. It's not so much because I was exposed, although I was exposed to pretty dramatic, like bodily, my mom had a mastectomy, tubes, surgical shit. Oh, and then just for fun, when my mom had her first mastectomy, it was on the morning of my 11th birthday.
Fun.
So I had my party a week before because it was scheduled on my birthday. And then the doctor that did her surgery in the hallway outside her room said to me, your mom has breast cancer, so it's very likely you're going to get it also. Meanwhile, I hadn't even grown boobs yet. I was not even in puberty.
Thanks.
So
happy birthday to me.
Awesome. A lot of awesome shit going on. Okay, let me get to my main point, which I keep trying to get to, which is that my medical anxiety comes from not necessarily being exposed to all these things, but not wanting to be dumb.
Yeah.
Like not wanting to ever feel like the dumbest kid in the room who just thinks her life is cool, but her mom has cancer. Now she's going to get cancer one day. And I just want to be like, oh yeah, I stubbed my toe, but I get it, everybody. I'm going to die from this. It's really somehow, it became really, really important to me to not be like a little kid, to not be the little kid, to not be sideswiped by the realities of life. I have to be very much like, I get it. I know, like nobody feel bad for me. Like I'm not the dummy in the room that you have to like break it to me. Like I have a stub toe. I know I'm going to die. Like it's very important for me to be super smart and like aware.
Yeah.
And that's another sort of like defining thing that happened from having a sick mom.
Yeah.
It changed everything for me.
Which is like such an incredibly and obvious is maybe not the right response, but it's just of course that would be like how you would come out of it. Right. And then it's like, and this is very, very different, but it's what I've been thinking about a lot too. And, now we're just talking about what we talk to our therapist about. But it's like, I've been thinking a lot about like the stories that we tell ourselves and like which of them are true and which of them aren't. And there's definitely stories that I've been telling myself for like 20 or 30 years that made sense when I lived with my parents, but I haven't lived with my parents for a very long time. And so like, why am I still using those stories as a way to like navigate my life? And of course that's a very oversimplified way of doing it. And thinking about it. And obviously it's not as easy as being like, oh, okay, I'm not going to believe this story anymore, because they get so weaved into our system and just how we exist. So yeah, but it's like, it's not a shocker that that's like what your response was. And that, it sucks that you had to deal with that. And like, that's the response, but it's also not surprising.
I think so, right? And that's sort of what therapy and life experience does. You're like, oh yeah, I guess that tracks. You know what I mean? But when you're in it,
Totally.
and it's like taking over your whole life,
Yeah.
it's like, you can't break out of these patterns. It's very challenging to do that. And I think, grief, at least in my experience, was like a lifestyle. It was like it was like a personality trait. I don't know if it is that way for everybody. And I don't know if it's because it happened when I was so young. But talk about stories we tell ourselves. Like, my story was, I had a sick ass mom and she fucking died. And that's my story. It's like my story almost was like about my mom died was my story.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, what's my story? Like, what do I like? And what do I love? I mean, of course that's threaded in somewhat. But
yeah.
Talking about the hierarchy, that was like, that became my story.
Yeah. That was the build. That was the base, the foundation.
Yeah. Truly. And it's not my favorite thing, but you're doing this podcast, you're talking to lots of people. Like, some days I think it's pretty embarrassing that I made that my personality, and then other days it seems pretty obvious. And I'm sure I'm not alone mostly. Like, I imagine somebody else on the planet has had that experience.
I would assume
be defining,
and I'd also assume
moment.
Not just one other person. I'm assuming there's a lot of people, because I know, referencing one of the episode was with Sarah Carter. Her mom died of breast cancer right around, I think, she was 21, she was 20, 21, 22, somewhere around there. So similar age. And I think that's also something that I've been thinking a lot about too, is just like, we aren't unique. And I mean that in the most amazing way possible. Is it's like all of us trying to like be special actually makes our lives worse. I feel like it makes us less connected to the world around us. And so just from pure statistics and stuff, I would say there's no way that you're the only person that had an experience like this and reacted the way that you did and like made that your identity in the way that you did. Like, there's no way. It just doesn't make sense.
I'd like to think that.
Yeah. And I think that's a nice thing to be like the individual that we're kind of like pushed, and the whole thing of like, you're special. I think part of that wants to say, yep, I'm the only one who had this experience and reacted this way. But that detaches us so much from the world. And so, yeah, I think you definitely did something that was very reasonable, and that there are other people that did something very, very similar. But yeah, it's like, you've been through a lot. I think that's one of my fears a little bit around the big question of what happens when we die. And like, some of the people I talk to, it almost feels like the prerequisite to, and I don't exactly know the right word, like, it's not necessarily a spiritual connection or like afterlife or whatever it is, but like, it almost feels like in some of these cases, the prerequisite is you have to have someone really close to you die. And then you can like really understand like that they're still there with you and this and that. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I don't necessarily want to lose people really close to me. I know I know I will, but I don't really want to go through that prerequisite at this point in my life to like firm up my beliefs around what happens. And that's not necessarily a choice one way or another, but that's always a weird one for me, where it's like, the people that seem a little bit more at peace with it are the people who have experienced it, which isn't necessarily, that's not that crazy of a thought. But I'm also like, okay, so like, is that what I have to go through to get more at peace? And I'm trying to find I'm trying to find peace without necessarily having to have that loss. I'm not going to be able to avoid that my whole life. Or I guess, you know what? I don't know that either. I think it freaks people out, but I could die tomorrow. So I could die before I lose, any of the huge major people in my family. Odds are unlikely, but not impossible.
Totally not impossible. And I think that's a really cool thing to hold on to. I do think that, though. I personally think that that's right. And I'm really glad you called that out, because we don't know, right? That goes back to something we talked about earlier. Like, you truly do not know. And to assume that like the chronology of it or how it will work, like, that's like some story. That is a story anyone would tell themselves, like, because we just don't know.
Yeah.
And the state of the world and vehicles being what they are and night driving and people driving while drunk. I'm not meant to be morbid, but like there truly are many, many variables that occur in the course of a day. And I don't mean that from like full on doom. I just mean like literally, like we know this because we have local news and we, watch, people live from the scene, whatever, like
it happens every day.
It fucking happens.
A lot of times every day.
Yes. Yes. And it's, like, it's nice not to think about that while you're trying to like go grocery shopping
Totally.
or like see a movie or whatever. Like that's appropriate, to not be like sitting in that every minute of the day. But yeah, you don't know. But I kind of want to offer this other sort of like perspective or this other detail, maybe not perspective, which is that I lost my dad in January of 2023. So not that long ago. He was 91. He lived 27 years after my mom, which is like, again, that's like 15 years of therapy we're not going to process now. But why I bring that up is I just raise this one point in reference to what you were saying, which is I lived for 27 years terrified because I lost my mom so young. And I loved my dad. He was also a really complicated guy. And our relationship had many complications inside of it. But at the heart of it, he was a loving guy and I loved him. And, again, you don't have the 27,000 hours for me to break it all down. Totally. So I'll just say that it was complicated and I loved him. And so with that, I spent 27 years after my mom died, hours and hours and hours in therapy, night sweats. What will I do when he dies? How will I survive it? Yeah. How will I survive it? So again, you're talking to a person who's lived a while and has been through many shades of this, and you're touching me on a good day. But when you said the thing about loss and anxiety and how you have to sort of go through it to experience it, this brought up maybe this point, which is like, I was sure that when my dad died that I would die. I was sure for years that I wouldn't know how to do it after he left because of the pain of losing my mom. And I felt this like constant fear of him dying, even in our complications, even in real and imagined failings of our relationship, which again, the details don't really matter now. And punchline, it was sad.
Yeah.
I got COVID in the hospital for the first time. I was in Florida, 23. I had managed to get avoided, and I came back from Florida. He died, and he died while I was landing on a plane back in New York. He was supposed to go to a facility. He was supposed to be alive for like another couple of weeks, and I had gone there from a trip. He fell ill. I was in Michigan with my husband's family. I went to Florida. Anyways, I was coming back to New York thinking I'd be back like a week and then maybe I'd turn around. But then inside of me, I was like, I think this might actually be it. Anyway, he died as my plane was landing. And then that night I started feeling ill, and then I had COVID. And so I had to isolate in my house. And then Brutal. I took the medicine to make COVID, whatever it's Paxlovid. And then I rebounded. So I was isolated in my attic, which is like a nice enough, like refurbished bedroom. But let's be honest, I'm in it right now. Actually, I'm where I isolated, and for almost 3 weeks. So my dad died, and then I was with COVID, and I really had it quite. I mean, not hospital bad, but it was pretty gnarly.
I mean, 3 weeks. That's a long time, and not when you want to be isolated.
So I couldn't, hug anybody. I could talk on the phone. I had FaceTime with some people. I couldn't hug my husband. I couldn't see my, stepkids, whatever. Anyway, my friends. So that was when my dad died in 2023. And I had been sure for decades, literal decades, that when my dad died, that I would slip off the side of the planet and never return. And what I learned was that wasn't true. And I was wrong. And I wasted a lot of time.
Yeah.
I wasted a lot of time being worried about it. Do I miss him? Certainly. I loved him a lot, and I think about him a lot. But I also want to say this with a lot. I don't know you at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know your deal. But my anxiety, my profound 27-year-long fear of losing my dad was entirely about me and not at all about him.
Yeah.
Like it had nothing to do with him at all.
Yeah.
It had to do with me, meaning I thought it was about grief. I thought it was like pre-felt grief. I thought it was like about my love for him. I thought it was about like whatever. our relationship. I don't know what but it wasn't. It was about control and fear and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, I don't really know if that's exactly what you were talking about, but it brought it up for me. So I wanted to share that because I've had two parents die and it's been different flavors. It's like the ice cream store, it's like one was like mint chocolate chip and one was like, I don't know, cookie dough. It's like with two different things.
Yeah.
And I thought they were the same thing.
Yeah.
And why they were different, maybe it's important to say, because I had decades of experience in life. And
you're a completely different person.
I evolved as a person. I was not a child.
Yeah.
You'd
been through it before.
Been in therapy exactly.
Yeah.
Everything was different.
There's a million reasons.
I didn't understand that. Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't understand that it was going to be different until it happened. Then I was like, oh. And was it easy? No. Did it suck? Absolutely. Was it hard? Yes. Is it still hard sometimes? Sure. Very much. But it wasn't
what you were expecting for 27 years.
It wasn't what I was expecting at all for 27 years.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit. Not even close. So maybe that's what I want to say to you is like similar to we don't know what happens when you die. You also don't know what happens when someone you care about dies. You actually don't know what that's going to feel like either. I hate to say. But I just think that like you actually can't anticipate that either.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know until you know.
You don't know until you know. I know. And I'm sorry. I think that's a really like, it's kind of like, when someone tells me that, I always kind of want to punch them.
I know. Like, totally.
So I know it's really annoying, but unfortunately it's true from my experience anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I really think about it, it's, not necessarily around loss, but just in general, it's true in my life too. It's like, I feel like I'm kind of a little preachy on here sometimes, but it's my meditation practice. And it's like, part of it is it's just like, because there's nothing outside of this moment, all we do have is right now. And it's always right now, forever. We don't really have like a future in a sense because we're just always experiencing what's happening now. And so it makes sense that the advice is, or not, I'm not saying that was your advice, but it's like that you don't really know until you know, because it's like you have no idea. There's a million things that could be going on at that time, good or bad, that also play a factor into the loss of somebody or, one of the things that I'm like super worried about. And I've also said for years, and I don't want to compare your dad to my dog, but I've kind of said for like, he's going to be 18 this year. And I've said for like 8 years at least that like when he dies, I'm going to be devastated, that it's just going to completely ruin me. And that might still be true. But like you said, it's like, I won't know until I know. And like, at least right now, like if it happened tomorrow, I, in my personal life, am in a way better place than I was this time last year. And so if it happened this time last year, I would have been completely different. I mean, this podcast is further, this project's further. So I've been able to like talk about death with more people. I've been able to like read about and learn more and kind of hone ideas around death. So yeah, I mean, I think everything is reminding me of that quote. It's like you can never walk through the same river twice because the river is never the same, essentially. I'm butchering that quote, but it's like, it's always moving. We're always changing. And I think the biggest thing that you said also is it's like so much of it, our fears and anxieties are around our desire to control the situation. And the things that we're talking about, we can't control. We can't control the loss of our loved ones. We can't control the our own deaths and what that's going to be like. And so that's part of the process too, I guess, is coming to terms with that and accepting this isn't something I control. It's just something that I can experience and deal with it when it comes. And so I'm really glad that you shared that and were willing to share that.
Yeah, I'm glad it was helpful. And I think it's a perfect analogy to talk about your dog because I've also experienced pet loss and I know exactly that feeling you're talking about. And I have a cat now and I like stare at her and I'm like, don't die, like,
don't you do it. Don't you do it.
Yeah. But I've had pets over my life and who I've lost and I know exactly that feeling. And it's a totally fair, by the way, you're doing this podcast about grief and death and what happens and like, fuck yeah, talk about people and their pets. You talk about some people can't have this conversation about humans. Like if we can't have, there's many people who can't have this conversation about humans. There's like times that by a million who can't have it about pets, right? Because then it's like, well, at least, it's just a pet, or whatever.
Yeah.
No.
So
anyway, I just want to call that out. Like that is a very valid line of logic in this subject that you're exploring, and super important also for a billion reasons. So yes to pet loss discussions also, because that is a truly life-defining thing and can be experienced in a million ways. And,
Totally.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And again, thank you for
asking.
Yeah. Well, I guess I think you did a lot of the legwork on things. So I appreciate that. And yeah, I had a wonderful time chatting with you. And thank you for being so willing to share your story to a basic stranger. And I really appreciate that.
Oh, thanks for saying. Well, thanks for doing this project and asking these questions, because I think about them a lot too. And I think it's a good, healthy kind of place to play and hang out and hear different perspectives, because certainly, just like people, there's a million ways to kind of think about this stuff. I'm super curious what people want to share about it too. And I'm really glad that you're doing this.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Right.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of When We Die Talks. I hope today's conversation sparked some thoughts and helped you feel a little more at ease with the idea of death. Remember, this journey is all about exploring our beliefs and fears together, so I'd love to hear from you. Call our voicemail at 971-328-0864 and share what you think happens when we die. Your thoughts might just be featured on a future episode and could help others on their own journey. Until next time, have a good life.